Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 online action. We're here today with the proud Dawi Karak Kadrin, specifically going to be taking on the foul Norskins. We do indeed have Napoleonic Ungrim here with a heavy gunpowder build, so let's get to it. Ungrim Iron Fist, of course, going to be leading the way for Karak Kadrin. I pick Karak Kadrin mostly because I love the color scheme, and Ungrim is by far and away my favorite Dwarf Lord. He's also the most competitive in my opinion. He's unbreakable, has decent combat stats, not the best melee defense, but 120 armor definitely makes up for that. And he also has armor-piercing anti-large with a bonus versus large of 35, which is considerable. A great Slayer character. In terms of the rest of the army, we've got two engineers here. I actually like engineers quite a bit in the current patch since they've been buffed. Their accuracy has been buffed, that is. They can dish out a solid amount of damage at range. I've stripped them both of all their buffs just to make them as cheap as possible. And then we've also got 4 units of Thunderers and 2 Dawi cannons to round out the gunpowder. The entire front line has blasting charges to keep in theme. We've got 4 miners and the Norgrimlings Ironbreakers in the center. I think the Norgrimlings Ironbreakers paint scheme fits in very well with Karak Kadrin. Besides the fact that, you know, they're one of the best regiments renowned in the game with a whopping 86 melee defense. They are almost impossible to kill in melee. 2 units of Slayers, of course, being under Karak Kadrin. One of them is the Dragonback Slayer, Regiment of Renown. That's pretty much it for my build. Zooming on over to the Norskins. Wulfric the Wanderer on a chariot, going to be leading the way. He's also got a Famir Balefiend Lore of Shadows. If we can have a look at his spell loadout here, the creepy one-eyed monster, got Enfeebling Foe, Melkos, and Penumbral Pendulum. A whole meat stick line of Marauder champions, so you don't get to see these guys too often, so we'll see how they perform here. They definitely look cool. I particularly like their weapons. Like, this guy's got like a little Kolek hammer, they got the big old ball mace, and this one's almost like an Oblivion iron mace or something. I like the look of them quite a bit. They're just a bit subpar in my opinion. He's got some Marauders out to the flanks, some Javelins, and Marauder Hunters. The Axes are decent in this matchup, although they do have very short range. The Javelins I'm not sure about. I guess they're here to counter Gyrocopters, potentially, which, you know, not an uncommon pick in this matchup. He's also got 1 Ice Wolf Chariot, and that's pretty much it. So without further ado, let's kick the battle into full gear, and we'll just soak up some sweet cinematics as these Norscan forces advance here into the Dawi Hill fortification. You can see the cannon coming in here, landing some good shots, and I want to talk a little bit about target prioritization, because it's probably one of the most important things as the Dawi here is shooting the appropriate target at the appropriate time. So my primary targets to focus down first are going to be chariots, because I'm going to have the hardest time bogging them down. So to that effect, we've got the 1 cannon battery firing at the Ice Wolf chariot, and the other one was firing at Wulfric. Wulfric's gone and hidden himself behind a rock, which is probably a smart play. So we're going to switch targets onto the Balefiend Lore of Shadows. He's the next kind of large target that we can get. He's large-ish. I mean, he counts as large, but he's actually not that big of a target, so the cannon will have a little bit of a hard time hitting him. But the cannon's sloped line of fire here wasn't quite able to get up and over this slight slope here, so we're going to move it out towards this flank a little bit. And yeah, we'll soak up some more cinematics as these Marauders are about to come in range here of the main firing line here of these Thunderers. And man, definitely glad Thunderers have been fixed. Well, the line of sight bug generally has been fixed, but Thunderers didn't suffer from it as badly as handgunners did, just because dwarves are shorter, so they're easier to shoot over. But yeah, you can see this engineer already opening up shots, picking off a few there, and soon we're going to get the main firing line underway here. So yeah, definitely a fun Dawi build, and Norskins are one of those factions, because they can't take a whole lot of cavalry, traditional cavalry that is, you're relatively safe to go with a wide gunpowder build. You can see the blasting charges getting thrown from the Norgrimlings Ironbreakers. Sending in these Famir Miststalkers against the Norgrimlings Ironbreakers is probably the worst target my opponent could have gone after with them. I would have much rather seen them go after one of these miners and try and roll up one of these flanks, because these Norgrimlings Ironbreakers are almost unbreakable. They have massive melee defense. They're going to take very little damage from the Miststalkers, and they are going to anchor them in place long enough for the guns to get the work done. You can see Wulfric's plowed into the back line here, and we're just going to keep it in cinematic mode for now so that we can soak up all the Dawi goodness of these lines of fire popping off. Wulfric's trying to maraud around the back line, but I've got 2 units of guns focused on him. The Slayers are chasing him down. He's just having a rough time overall. Meanwhile, the Miststalkers in the front line are just getting gatted by Engineers. We've got the 2 units of Thunderers also focusing fire on them. Fortunately, my opponent's throwing axes look like they're targeting my Thunderers, which is definitely a mistake. Again, I think what my opponent should have done here was try and collapse these miners as quickly as possible. You can see the miners with their blasting charges got some okay damage done. They'll do a bit of damage against the champions, but the champions will definitely take them to task. It's one of the few matchups that champions will actually win. But yeah, you can see the Miststalkers pretty much all completely gone. I think we actually finished them off to the man there. And Wulfric also just barely going down there in the back line to the overwhelming guns. So those 2 units alone going down is going to shift the balance of power pretty decisively in my favor. And the Dawi gun lines are relatively secure at this point. We did lose a couple units of miners here, so a slight compromised position here. But this engineer is going to hold his ground. He does armor piercing in melee, not the most, but he does have this kind of cool cog hammer thing. But this is going to allow this unit of Thunders in particular to fire in from the flank here. And the cannon down on the low ground has also been left alone. So we're going to secure it with these Slayers, start firing into this big mess here. Still firing over into these champions here. One more Marauder, a couple more Marauder chariots actually, these Ice Wolf chariots. Ooh, nasty shot from the cannon there. Just takes it right down, secured the guns, and now we're able to get back online firing away at these champions. It's only a matter of time here. You can see a brutal cannon shot as these Marauder champions have a chase order on these Thunderers that have been shattered, so a little bit unfortunate there. But at this point, it's, for all intents and purposes, over for the Norskins. Another very nice number pendulum by my opponent there. Kind of spiteful revenge. But yeah, this is what the Famir should have been doing from the beginning. Because they cause fear and terror, and because the miners have very low stats, they could have probably rolled up the miners pretty quickly, and then I would have had a lot harder time protecting my guns. But because he sent the Miststalkers just straight up the center against the strongest unit I had, that's going to take almost no damage from them, I was able to fix them in place and use the guns to just gun them down. And yeah, very fun stuff. Hope you guys enjoyed watching. It's been a while since I've had a Napoleonic Dawi build, so yeah, figured I should bust them out. And the Norskins, they are a relatively fast faction. They do have some chariots, but again, they don't have any traditional cavalry or anything with a really high charge bonus. I mean, you have the Regiment of Renown Skin Wolves that have armor piercing, but their stats are somewhat subpar, and you can deal with them pretty well with things like Slayers. So I felt relatively comfortable going with a wide missile build here. If I, spread out and just try and secure guns as much as possible, turn and fire. That whole, when a force breaks through the front line, then you just turn and focus fire on them and try and clean them up as quickly as possible. Definitely worked out in my favor in this particular battle. The Engineers both not racking up that many kills, but they're mostly shooting at high-value targets like Wulfric, the Famir Balefriend, the Thunderers. None of them picked up XP chevrons, but they all got some pretty decent work done. My opponent's army was pretty small to begin with, so the kill totals here are going to be low overall. But the Thunder is definitely taking out Wulfric, helping to take out Wulfric, that is, and helping to gun down those chieftains, or sorry, the champions in the front line. Definitely very key. Cannons, 30 and 49. This one did manage to pick up an XP chevron from shooting down those chariots. That in and of itself definitely paid for it. And then the Slayers, I didn't catch it, but the one unit of Slayers got out on the flank and just wrecked a unit of Marauders straight up, and then managed to come back and clean up. I think that was the Dragonback Slayers. And then the other ones, they didn't really get asked to take down that many large units. My opponent really didn't have that much in the way of large, and this is kind of an example. I mean, granted, even like Chosen with great weapons may have lost out in that engagement just because of the overwhelming guns, although they definitely would have won quicker. But this just kind of goes to show how subpar champions are. They weren't able to cut through miners that quickly. At least it took them long enough that I was able to win the battle in the meantime. So just in general, we can compare them to a number of Dawi units here. I think that would potentially be useful just to kind of showcase how terrible champions with great weapons are. So if we flip over here to Norska, and let's grab the Proud Dawi here, I want to compare them to Longbeards with great weapons, because I have a sneaking suspicion Longbeards with great weapons are just better all around. Let's see here. So the Marauder champions have less armor. They have slightly more health, not by much, but they also have worse leadership, and it's worth noting that the Longbeards have both Encourage and Immune to Psychology, and they also have Charge Defense against large, so keep that in mind here. They're obviously slower than the Marauder champions, no surprise there. They have slightly worse melee attack, but more importantly, and again, if you watch a lot of my videos, you'll know I harp about this continuously, they have better melee defense, which is very, very important. Melee defense is one of the most important stats in the game. They have less weapon strength and less charge bonus, obviously, as to be expected, but considering their melee stats, at least in terms of attack and weapon strength, are not that much worse, and they're a full, what, 350 points cheaper than the Marauder champions. It's just, champions are pretty poor. We can even compare them one-to-one to Hammerers. Hammerers are just a direct cost comparison here, and Hammerers, again, slightly less health, but better armor, leadership, less speed. But they have better melee attack and better melee defense and better weapon strength. The only thing the Marauder champions have going for them in this matchup is their health and their charge bonus. Other than that, Hammers are just better in every way, and I don't even think Hammers are that cost-effective of a unit. You know, they have great weapon strength, but 34 melee defense for a unit that expensive really isn't amazing. And so you guys can kind of see here why Marauder champions with great weapons are so trash. So what would I take in this matchup instead? I think I would definitely go with a wider line. Marauders will get cut up by things like blasting charges, but they just give you a lot of bodies to throw at your opponent mainly. Throg can be a decent matchup, although he will get shot up pretty hard. Wulfric has a lot of the same issue though. You saw I was able to shoot that chariot very aggressively and just focus fire. Again, target prioritization, you want to take down Wulfric first out of anyone, because obviously you take him down, the rest of the army's leadership suffers, and also that single model chariot, especially in the late game, if you don't shoot him down before he takes out all your ranged units, then he can pretty much just cheese you out with that single model chariot. I've seen it happen, and it's little the dwarfs can do about it at that point, now that they don't have Tormentor Sword to lock him down in place. If you lose all your ranged units and you don't have like a runesmith to slow them down, it can be almost impossible to kill a character on a chariot. So you definitely want to focus down their general, especially if he's on a chariot first things first, obviously not only because of the leadership, but you need to take out that chariot. It's the biggest threat to you. And then obviously other fast attack units you want to take out first and then eventually focus on the infantry. But just in general, I think a better infantry line would have been to take the Marauders. That just generally allows you to go cheaper. Maybe a couple shielded champions wouldn't be a bad idea. And then you just want to support with more Famir. The Miststalkers are a great pick. I definitely don't disagree, but you're going to need more than just them. So I'll grab a few more, and then personally, I like the Sorcerer Lore of Metal on a chariot. The Famir Balefiend Lord of Shadows is a very good pick as well. But I'm personally going to go with this guy just so that we can get Transmutation of Lead to negate the Dawi attack stats. Since they already don't have great melee attack, you can put them at close to 0 melee attack with this Transmutation of Lead, so that you'll take very little damage in melee, and of course Plague of Rust going to be very good against the dwarves in general. And then for a Lord, Throg or Wulfric are kind of interchangeable here. We'll take Wulfric just because he's slightly cheaper on the chariot, and take his abilities as well. So something like this I think would be pretty solid. We're still lacking in a little bit of backline harass, so maybe a couple of Marauder Horsemen with throwing axes. And at this point we've got a couple of other things, maybe a Norscan Warhound to run around and try and get on cannon crews, or at the very least chase routing units. I would like to bring some chariots, so maybe we try and get some cost to bring something like a Marauder Icewolf chariot. But something like this I think might be a bit better. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, though. If you have experience in this matchup, what do you like to take as Norsca against the dwarfs? I've taken a multitude of different things, and some things are viable, some things are not. A build like this will do pretty well as long as your Famir don't get shot up too hard, but even though Famir do have this missile resistance, 22%, Thunders still dish out enough damage, and like if they bring Iron Drakes, it's game over. Iron Drake torpedoes, that is. It's pretty much game over for the Famir. So Famir, this is one of the few matchups where they suffer a little bit. I mean, they're good. The armor sundering and the armor piercing in melee is definitely good, but because they do magic damage, the Dawi mitigate that a little bit, and they are vulnerable to missiles somewhat. Especially armor-piercing missiles like Thunders. So let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below, though. I'm always interested to hear your feedback. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button so every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.